So no doubt you've heard numerous news blurbs and people at work and everywhere else talking about Obama's State of the Union address. It's funny, he's given 6 or 7 State of the Union addresses now, and I wonder which one was more dishonest than the others. They were all pretty dishonest of the ones I've heard and listened to, so I couldn't be bothered this time. He already has a track record as a obvious liar, in my opinion. But my good friend Mike D said, "You should give your State of the Union address." And I said, "You know what, Michael D, that is a great idea." So here I am to give you my State of the Union address for 2015. Poll after poll shows that what the American citizen or consumer, depending on what you want to call them, cares about is the economy. So let's talk about the economy. First of all, our money is printed by a Federal Reserve, which is an unconstitutional central bank that that Andrew Jackson, JFK, and many other presidents, most of whom were assassinated while in office, I might add, have tried to stop because it is unconstitutional, and its primary purpose has been to devalue American currency and thereby rob and plunder from the American citizen the very value of their time and net worth. So if you think about the fact that time is money, and when you go to work, you give your time for money, and all life is time, you're really giving away some of your life for money. And when the government goes and prints a bunch of more money, devaluing the currency you've given part of your life away from, they're actually taking your life one nickel at a time. So that's something to think about. So that's the backdrop in which we currently reside, where the Federal Reserve just prints money nonstop, ripping everybody off. What used to be costs pennies or dimes now costs dollars or hundreds of dollars. And that's no accident and no secret. That's how inflation works, and that's the primary reason behind the Federal Reserve when it was created behind closed doors illegally by large banking interests such as J.P. Morgan. Yes, that J.P. Morgan. Fat jerk he was. Anyway, so that's what's going on here in this country, but the best part is we've now exported this brilliant idea of quantitative easing throughout much of the world. Japan's economy is now a joke. They've been printing money nonstop as well. The European Union, they're printing money nonstop. They're fully on the quantitative easing bandwagon. And basically now almost all of the civilized world is under this giant centralized banking, Rothschild money printing ridiculousness. And of course, the top 1% are getting wealthier and wealthier, and the lower class and the middle class are continuing to lose value both in their time and in all of their holdings, because all holdings really can be exchanged for dollars. So the more the dollar is worth less, or the euro is worth less, or the yen is worth less, or whatever monetary unit they're printing nonstop, which inevitably leads to the devaluation of that currency, that actually devalues everything in the economy, not just the money itself. Closely tied to the economy, of course, is energy. We've got some very interesting energy policies going on. A lot of American citizens are excited because the price of gas is so low. I can fill my tank for less than $30. Yes, you can fill your tank for less than $30. But that's on purpose, and most people don't realize the costs that are being externalized that they're not aware of with the current situation with fossil fuels. The primary reason that fossil fuels are so cheap is because Saudi Arabia and the U.S. are producing oil faster than they've ever produced oil in history, and the supply is such that the supply is actually outstripping demand, leading to fossil fuel price warfare. And a lot of people say, well, that's pretty counterintuitive. If we're in the business of selling oil, we would want the price to be higher, as would Saudi Arabia. But there's a purpose to it in this case. Russia, one of their only exports is oil. So by devaluing oil, we're throwing the ruble into utter chaos. That's not the conspiracy theory. That's pretty obviously the fact. The ruble is in a lot of trouble. Russia's economy is in a lot of trouble. And that's all been carefully orchestrated by the US and Saudi Arabia, which I don't know whose lapdog is who there. Either we're Saudi Arabia's lapdog or Saudi Arabia's our lapdog. I'm not really sure how that works out. But either way, what one does, the other does the same way. And one of the reasons we've been able to produce so much oil is through new shale oil mining technologies, aka fracking. Fracking is a very interesting thing. It's actually illegal in Germany and in a lot of other countries because when you frack, you pump the ground full of horrible toxic chemicals, which ruins the water table in that area. So you can never get clean water in that area again. Well, maybe in a million years. We don't know the timeline on that. But certainly not in our lifetime, and probably not in our children's or grandchildren's lifetimes either, will we be able to have clean drinking water in the areas where we've been fracking. Another great benefit of fracking is earthquakes, where there have never been earthquakes before. Ohio and Oklahoma are suddenly having earthquakes. Go Buckeyes. Is that Ohio? I don't follow sports. I don't know what's going on with that. And meanwhile, the rest of the world is, of course, divesting itself of fossil fuels and moving towards solar, which obviously makes a lot more sense. Solar panels have gone down in price 90% per kilowatt hour in the last decade. So that means for every solar panel you buy, you get 90% more energy than you would have paid for a decade ago. And even a decade ago, they made sense on a price level when you do some math as a long-term investment. But now it's even making sense as a short-term investment as well. That's why you see countries like Germany and a lot of Asian countries moving into solar. Even in areas where it doesn't particularly shine with full solar illumination all year, the solar still makes sense. You still get some power out of that, and for a very low initial investment, you end up getting power for a very long time. Solar panels need very little maintenance other than cleaning, and they last a long time. So, and of course, the other elephant in the room is thorium nuclear power. You don't hear a lot about thorium nuclear power. Nobody really wants to discuss it. But if we were to build thorium nuclear plants, which are, by the way, completely safe and create no radioactive waste, and you would never have a situation like Fukushima. They're what you call walk-away safe, as in you could have the nuclear plant operating and walk away and it would still be fine. There would be no meltdown or anything else. If we switched over to thorium nuclear power, that would solve all of our energy needs very neatly and easily and cheaply and safely. But, you know, the big corporations who sell fossil fuels and fossil fuel related products don't want that to happen just yet until we're really out of fossil fuels, which I don't know if that'll happen in our lifetime. There's a lot of that dead dinosaur juice under the ground. So let's talk about health. Obamacare has been just awesome. If you're an insurance company, it's raised the profits for the insurance company industry. Maybe twofold, threefold, tenfold. I don't know. I don't know if we're getting the real math on that. But of course, you know, when you have a bill that's written by insurance companies for insurance companies and then passed by politicians who are paid by the same insurance companies, they're going to make some money. That's how our government works. Big companies pay representatives who clearly represent those big companies paying them the money to pass whatever they want, and then it benefits the big companies ultimately. The image that you might have seen on Facebook or Imager or Twitter or wherever of the congressmen with NASCAR jackets and corporate logos, that's extremely accurate. I mean, that's pretty much how our government is run now. Different giant corporations pay them to do whatever they want, and that's how it gets done. So as a result, human health suffers greatly in this country. Diabetes has never been higher, and it's still on the rise. Obesity and heart-related disease, never been higher, still on the rise. Autism, and you know, there's a lot of debate. Oh, this is vaccines. Oh, this is, you know, glyphosate, aka Roundup, aka Monsanto's main product, aka Obama's chief investor's main product. You know, but the truth is, you know, it's probably all of these things together leading to such high incidences of heart disease, obesity, cancer, We're pumping everybody in the country full of high fructose GMO corn syrup, and then we're wondering why everybody's so sick. Well, it's not a real mystery. There's a reason why in a lot of the civilized world GMOs are now illegal, and that's because the health effects of putting pesticide and herbicide proof genetically modified organisms into people's stomachs and intestinal systems, that doesn't always work out very well for the intestinal system. We've evolved over millions of years without that stuff, and now we're introducing this new foreign agent that really is nothing our body has ever been evolved to cope with before, and I can't believe anybody's surprised that's not going well. That just kind of stands to reason. Let's talk about war too. We're still at war. We're still in Iraq. We're still in Afghanistan. We're now in the Ukraine, we're funding the Ukrainians something. It's not us though, right? Because we wouldn't start a war with Russia. Russia's starting a war with somebody innocent that we happen to be funding to the tune of billions of dollars of weapons and actual cash. Where Joe Biden's son is now president of a major oil company. I'm sure that, had nothing to do with it. But yeah, so we're in Ukraine too, and Syria, of course, is the big story. We're still trying to get in Syria, despite the fact that we tried to make a chemical attack look like it was the Syrian government, when in fact it was the Syrian rebels who are, of course, funded by American tax dollars. All terrorist groups are, really. They're either funded directly by the CIA or Mossad, but either way, that's American tax dollars. American tax dollars fund the CIA, and American tax dollars get funneled into Israel, who then gives it to Mossad, one of their super ethical government branches, and then they start terrorist groups so that they can go in and bomb those terrorist groups or those terrorist nations or rogue terrorist states, whatever they want to call them, with impunity. Each one of those missiles costs millions of dollars, and that's the American taxpayer buying those too. So we're still at war in all these places, of course. It's big business. It's a very lucrative business. The Department of Defense makes millions of dollars, billions of dollars every year from American taxpayers. National debt still skyrocketing. Inflation still skyrocketing. The net worth of the individual American citizen still plummeting. But, let's go ahead and grease those wheels for Lockheed Martin and Grumman and everybody else a little bit more. All this boils down to, again, is giant corporations. Dick Cheney's wife was president of Lockheed Martin for 10 years. So is it any wonder that we started a giant war with Iraq and started bombing the hell out of these third worlds? Poor people, Of course not. That's big business. Dick Cheney's wife is raking in billions in profit. I mean, she got all those bonuses. He's getting the bonuses too. And he's getting kickbacks too on the side from Halliburton, his former company, who I'm sure he still owns a lot of stock in, who got a bunch of no-bid contracts to rebuild Iraq, i.e. drive brand new trucks into the desert and set them on fire rather than give them an oil change, because you can sucker the American public out of even more tax money that way, can't you? Meanwhile, we've got returning troops, veterans who, to a large extent went over there as idealistic youth, thinking they were doing the right thing for their country and their families, only to come back, with horrible injuries, both physically and mentally. And for what, So Dick Cheney and his wife can make a few extra $1 billion? It's interesting, too, people defend Obama all the time. Well, he can't change anything, or, they'd kill him, well, okay, he is still murdering children in the third world with robots. Those predator drones come out of the sky and kill people, and there's no chance of any opposition. I mean, even if they shoot a predator drone down, it's not like we're not going to just buy another one from Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman or whoever we're buying them from. We stand no risk, and we wanted the predator drone to go down anyway, so we could buy another one, so we could take more tax money from the American people. It's just It's a never-ending cycle of violence and money. And giant corporations are behind all of it. Monsanto, Goldman Sachs, they're behind absolutely every single thing that happens now in the country. They've bought our representative, democratically elected Congress and Senate, um, the bottom lock, stock, and barrel. Even if you could get real media about any of this, you're not going to. I mean, 5 corporations own every television station, every radio station, every newspaper, every magazine. They own all the internet service providers. You know, it's the corporations are going to do whatever they want. They're going to get whatever they want. And we can see what they want. They want to continue to tax humans for profit. I mean, that's what this boils down to. They're actually taking human life a little bit at a time, maybe not outright killing people, although in the case of predator drones, clearly they're outright killing people as well. But in the case of the American people, they're just, killing them little by little with cancer and diabetes and obesity and heart disease and all the different genetically modified diseases. Irritable bowel syndrome has been linked to GMOs and glyphosate, all these different things. These are all big, giant corporate products. So what can you do? Is there any silver lining here? Is there any good news in Rye's State of the Union address? As a matter of fact, there is. What you can do is you can do it yourself. You can build it yourself. You can grow it yourself. You can make it yourself. And increasingly, more and more people are doing that. Millennials in particular, there's a big back to the land movement among them, and they're trying to get land and grow organic produce and sustain themselves in ways that are long-term sustainable, that don't involve corporate profit and murder for profit and all the other big money schemes that are going on and ruining everything that we love, or that most Americans love in this country. Yeah, organic gardening. That's the solution. If everybody had a big organic garden and grew all their own stuff and traded it without using money at all, then that would solve a lot of these issues. Bartering is a good way to get out of this kind of the money scheme that's going on with the quantitative easing and the money printing that's going on around the world. If you barter something, you haven't cut the government in on even a percentage of your earnings. Instead, you get to keep everything, or the person you're trading with gets to keep everything that they're trading for as well. And that way you cut out the tax man, you cut out the corruption in the federal government, certainly, also state and local governments in a lot of situations as well. The do-it-yourself movement is getting bigger every day. There's 3D printing now. There's the whole maker-hacker culture. A lot of people are getting involved in that, building their own things, making their own things, designing their own things, open sourcing their own hardware and software designs. This is the good news. This is the good news. This is the way we can fight back against these corporations, is to make and grow our own things and trade them with each other directly for other grown and made things, cutting the government out of the business cycle altogether. And that's the solution. And that's really kind of the design behind the Constitution. If you read the Federalist Papers and how the Constitution was designed, it was for everybody to own their own small family farm and make and grow and trade their own things and have economic prosperity without any kind of siphoning off the wealth from the top. And we've lost our way now. Everybody lives in a tiny little concrete box in a city, or the vast majority of people do. And they can't really grow their own stuff. They can't really make their own stuff. They don't have the resources to do any of that. Instead, they go punch a clock somewhere and give away little tiny pieces of their life every day for paper money that's increasingly worth less and less as the Fed continues to print more. So the takeaway, I guess, from my State of the Union is it's not over yet. They haven't beat us all the way. The firearm sales are up. Ammo sales are up. More and more people are getting into gold and silver and Bitcoin and alternatives to the fiat currencies that these governments are putting out everywhere. More and more people are making their own things and trading them directly with friends and neighbors and relatives, as the Constitution intended. So there's some silver lining here, but it's going to be hard. It's really going to take a cognitive leap from all of society to determine, hey, these corporations are really killing all living things on the planet. The acidification of the ocean, the biodiversity that's gone down globally, Some of these are very serious environmental issues that are going to affect all things in the food chain, not just humans, which the American people are, of course, humans, and they are part of that food chain as well. So think about that, Union, during my State of the Union address. Yeah, so arm yourself, grow your own, build your own, trade everything you can with other people that you actually know locally. And I don't know, we could beat these corporations. We could move right around their giant media monopoly, their giant Zionist mind control scheme, and truly live in a society of egalitarian, libertarian values that I think most of us want to live in. So go out there and do it.